A quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of chambers in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. We ask our chaplain, Father Constantine Papadimos, to offer today's prayer.
Let us pray. Lord, you are always looking to take us to higher levels. You want us to grow and increase in faith. Yet you will stir us out of comfortable situations and stretch us because you love us too much to allow us to live in mediocrity. Lord, be with us this day and direct our every step, for we embrace your seasons of change, and we thank you for helping us to grow. Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Assemblywoman Conway. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Tuesday, December 21st, 2010. Pursuant to the provisions of Joint Rule 59, the following Assembly Journal for the 2011-12 regular session is printed.
Mr. Calderon moves, Ms. Conway seconds, that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentation of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of the bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none.
Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and deemed printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, I request unanimous consent to allow the following members to speak on adjourn in memory: Mr. Ng, Mr. Fong, Mr. Knight, Mr. Lowenthal, Mr. Nastanti, and Mr. Nielsen.
Without objection.
Also, Madam Speaker, Assembly Bill 1 is at the desk. I request unanimous consent to take this bill up without reference to file for the purpose of second reading today, and to order the bill to third reading for Thursday, January 6, 2011.
Without objection. The clerk will read the bill.
Assembly Bill 1.
All bills will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. There is no business on the daily file, so we will go directly to adjourn in memories. Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Members, I'd like to adjourn in memory for a young soldier that was raised in the area I represent, the Antelope Valley. He died November 29th at the hands of a border policeman. He was being trained to help out the Afghan police, and this police border patrol turned his weapon on 6 of our soldiers and killed them on November 29th. Matthew Ramsey is a graduate of Quartz Hill High. He was married 6 months after he finished basic training, and left behind a 17-month-old and his wife pregnant with their second child. And I ask for your thoughts and prayers.
Mr. Logue. Mr. Logue? Mr. Logue, you have 2 adjourned memories today? No. Mr. Nastande?
I rise in adjourned memory of Officer Ryan Bonominio. Ryan was born in Riverside, California on November 25th, 1982 to Joseph and Geraldine Bonominio. He was raised in Riverside and graduated in 2000 from Ramona High School. After high school, he joined the United States Army, where Ryan served two tours of duty in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was a military police officer with the 314th Military Police. Ryan transitioned from military service to law enforcement with the Riverside Police Department on July 7, 2006, all while continuing his commitment to the United States Army Reserve. On the night of November 7, 2010, Officer Ryan Bonominio was on routine patrol when he pulled over a stolen semi-truck believed to have been involved in a hit-and-run collision. Ryan was gunned down by Earl Green, a state prison parolee, following the traffic stop. Officer Bonominio's tragic death is a reminder to all of us, the law enforcement family, that the supreme sacrifice of service is also a cost borne by loved ones, families, and community. Officer Bonominio served his commitment with honor and distinction. I attended Officer Bonominio's funeral, and it was very touching to see all the lives that he had touched in Riverside, and it truly was a reminder of a hero that I could point to for my children, and I think other people could in the city of Riverside, a man that had stepped up to defend his country, came back home, continued serving to protect the lives and property of people in Riverside, and was killed in cold blood. Ryan Bonominio was served by his mother, Geraldine, and father, Joseph, along with his brother, Christopher, and sister, Nicole. I ask you to adjourn in memory in honor of Ryan Bonominio. Thank you.
Mr. Nielsen.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, I'd like to entreat you to adjourn in memory, very reverential adjournment in memory for one of our former members, Alistair McAllister. Assemblyman McAllister was from Fremont, represented both the 18th and the 25th Assembly District. In his years here, he was preceded in death by his wife, Evelyn. He went to the University of Illinois, got his law degree, and practiced law. Briefly was a deputy district attorney. They have 5 children, one whose husband you know, Mike Knudsen, one of our very able lobbyists here, who helped to get me reunited with Alistair after a number of years of absence. He served in the United States Army, taught school at the Willamette University in Oregon, also at McGeorge School of Law. He practiced in San Jose. He was on the Board of Trustees of the Eastside Union High School District. He served in the Assembly from 1970 to 1986, and one of the remarkable records, he authored 411 bills, 388 of them were served and signed into law. So I guess you would say Alistair was a pretty good legislator. I had a lot of fun working with him, being in a select group once called the Gang of Four. So I will say I was in a gang with Alistair McAllister. The Gang of Four was Bob Presley, Jim Nielsen in the Senate, Alistair McAllister, and Dave Sterling here, who we were the ones who carried all of the tough crime bills in those years. And a lot of the law reviews still speak to the accomplishments and the defeats of that Gang of Four. He was a true gentleman, a great credit to this institution, one who all we could respect over the years. He did remain active with his family and in his church till the very end. He was 80 years old. This is certainly one man that did honor our institution, and it is appropriate that we honor him.
Mr. Calderon?
I had one more. Oh, yes.
Yes, Madam Speaker, members, there isn't a lot that I can add to Mr. Nielsen's comments about Alistair, except to just share my personal sadness that he's gone. Alistair was probably the most unique person I've ever met in the legislature. And I'm not just saying that because these are the kinds of things you say at these kinds of times. He truly was. He was unconcerned with the politics of this House, completely unconcerned. And yet he chaired one of the most powerful committees in the Assembly. At the time it was insurance and finance, which included banking. Very, very powerful. But his reputation for fairness and honesty was impeccable and unmatched, that not even the Speaker would go to him and ask him to do anything that he felt was against his principles. On the other hand, he had a great sense of humor. He made a difference in my life in the sense that when I became a freshman, I got this appointment to F&I, which was, it'd never been done before, and I didn't know what I was doing. And he was there to help me every step of the way. He would take me and school me on finance issues, insurance issues, issues that would come up that I didn't quite understand why so many people were fighting about it. I'd go and talk to him, and he'd say, well, here's been the history, here's the tradition, here's what's at stake. But he would never, ever come to me and ask me to vote one way or the other, which is why I always supported him, because he was smart, because he had high integrity, and because his principles were intact and unassailable. So we've lost a great leader in California. He made a contribution, one that all of you, all of us, will make. But his is memorable. He was in the legislature for, what, over 20 years, Mr. Nielsen. And he never gave up on his principles. And he was always behind a good idea. A good idea. In fact, he was the one I mentioned to some of the freshmen when we were going through legislative orientation, that nothing supplants a good idea. A good idea in this place is the most powerful thing that you can have, and Alistair taught me that. So I miss him. We'll all miss him. We'll never forget the contribution that he made as a member of this House and a member of this institution.
Mr. Wojciechowski.
Madam Pro Temp, it's my pleasure to represent Fremont in the Assembly now, and Alistair McAllister, when I was a schoolboy, was the representative, and I thank Mr. Nielsen for bringing this memorandum. I know there's a lot of people in Fremont that still remember him as a great man and a great legislature, and it's an honor to try to fill his boots while I'm up here.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. You have another in memoriam.
If I may, another one of our noble warriors has passed, Specialist Derek Todd Simonetta. He was 21, attended Central Valley High, Lake Shasta, who was killed December 12th. Car bomb, a roadside bomb. He was a member of the 2nd Battalion, 502nd Infantry Regiment, 2nd Brigade Combat Team, the 101st Airborne. He was based in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He has a grieving family, a wife, family members up in Lake Shasta, another one of our warriors who has passed. I submit that we could adjourn in his honor. And Madam Speaker, do we get an approval for Senator Virgil O'Sullivan also for today?
Okay, Mr. Nielsen.
I appreciate the indulgence, members. A former California state senator hailing from Colusa County passed away a week and a half ago, and I'll be attending his service tomorrow. Virgil O'Sullivan was kind of an agricultural legend in the North State. He did attend law school and became an attorney and practiced till just 5 years ago as an attorney. He served 3 terms in the state Senate and was author of a lot of the key water legislation that was the hallmark of Governor Pat Brown's era of raised expectations. After his tenure here, and he was a product of something called the one-man, one-vote decision, where the so-called cow counties lost their vote in the state Senate. And as Los Angeles, you all gained many seats, folks like Virgil O'Sullivan sort of lost out on the deal. But he remained an active force in the Democratic Party for years. He would be a very conservative Democrat and one who I got along very well with. But another example, like Alistair McAllister, of the true gentleman or gentle lady who have served in this institution by their very being here, were great credits. Thank you for allowing me to recognize him today for an adjourning memory, and I can convey that which I know will be of great comfort to his family. When his son called me on Christmas Day, he broke down in weeping, not because I was the insider of insiders of the family, but that I was a senator. And being a senator was so important to his dad. And he called and he said, "Jim, I have some news to tell you. It's sad news. The senior senator has passed." I took that for what it was, my senior. Thank you.
Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker, members, I'd like to take the prerogative of the floor, if you will, and intrude a little bit on this solemn part of our session to introduce someone who has had so much to do in shaping California over the last 20 or 25 years. There aren't many icons, political icons, that are still alive, but we have one in the rear of the chambers. It's Congressman Howard Berman. Mr. Blumenfield, I hope I didn't usurp, but he's former Majority Leader of this House, Chair of the International and Foreign Affairs Committee. Please join me in recognizing the presence of this memorable individual.
Well, I see Congressman Costa also in the back, in the rear of the chamber. Welcome, Congressman Costa. Okay, we're going to go back to adjourn in memories. Mr. Eng.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I went to the funeral about a month ago of a man that I thought was a tragedy in that he died far too early. You see, Deputy Probation Officer Christopher Cook was a mentor to young people after hours. And if you can imagine a man who spent 40 or 50 hours as a probation officer dealing with the criminal justice system, and then another 4 to 8 hours after that being a role model to troubled youth in his community, that was a person that died far too young. He spent 21 years as a probation officer in LA County, had a great passion for his job, was active in his church, was on the board of the Asian Youth Center, the Asian Pacific Family Counseling Center, a man who gave back far, far more than he really was expected to do. And unfortunately, he passed on October 12th after a year-and-a-half fight with MDS. And unfortunately, despite a search for a bone marrow transplant that was consistent with his type of bone marrow, he was not able to find one. And so the lesson to all of us is that we need to do something to prevent this from occurring ever again. So I asked members to join me in adjourning in the memory of Deputy Probation Officer Christopher Cook. Thank you.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, thank you for adjourning today in honor of Don Fultz, one of the most prolific behind-the-scenes politicos in Long Beach history. He put his imprint on the politics of Long Beach, the state, and the nation for many, many years. He helped start and guide many public service careers, many of the people you know, Mayor Beverly O'Neill, Congressman Stephen Horn, Congressman Adam Schiff, many people because he understood the value of loyalty, and he was very bipartisan in the work that he did. It was often said that if you plan to run for office in Long Beach, your first stop better be Don Foltz's kitchen table. But for all his years of advice and campaigning, he managed to maintain a very low profile, always staying out of the spotlight and never seeking attention for himself. He was, in every way possible, a gentleman, and he will be missed. Thank you.
Those are all the adjourned memories that I have on file. Does anybody else wish to speak on an adjourned memory? Mr. Calderon?
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, I wanted to speak in memory and adjourn in the memory of Jenny Oropesa. Jenny was a member of this House and then ultimately a member of the Assembly. She came from the Long Beach City Council, but before that she came to me and said she wanted to learn about politics, and I gave her first political job. And then she started teaching me from that point on. But Jenny was unyielding when she believed in something. She believed in it passionately, touched a lot of people along the way. She, in many ways, accomplished greater things than I ever could have, but she always talked to me about being her mentor, which was, she's just being nice. But she always showed that respect for members and also for our relationship. She's going to be missed, but you can't really talk about Jenny without talking about her husband, who was the man behind the woman because he gave her the freedom to be able to be a good member and to be a good legislator, and she soared and accomplished great things. So we're going to miss Jenny, and I'd like this House to adjourn in memory.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd too ask this House to adjourn in memory today of Ms. Joyce Butler, who passed away November 9th, 2010 in the city of Chino Hills after battling cancer for more than a year. She married her husband, George Butler, in 1969, and they raised 5 children in Chino Hills. And Joyce is one of those city icons that was involved in pretty much every volunteer activity for the last 30 years in the city. She was a valuable friend in the community, advocate in the city who graciously and extensively contributed to the city of Chino Hills community through her volunteer work. Joyce created the Los Serranos Neighborhood Group to help neighbors with small home and yard repairs in 2001. It was the first graduate class of the city's Neighborhood Leadership Academy in 2002. She became a city volunteer in the Neighborhood Services Division in 2004. Over the years, she has been recognized as the city's highlighted volunteer, Outstanding Citizen of the Year, and along with her husband as the Chino Hills Community Hero. In addition to hosting National Night Out events and organizing the gift side of caring for the Hills, at Christmas, Joyce is also active in Little League, soccer, 4-H, Future Farmers of America, Friends of the Library, and the Habitat for Humanity. So therefore, I ask that the Assembly adjourns in memory of Joyce Butler today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. Please bring the names to the desk to be printed in the journal. The session schedule is as follows. Tuesday, January 4th, check-in session. Wednesday, January 5th, check-in session. Thursday, January 6th, floor session at 9 a.m. Friday, January 7th, no session. I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Calderon moves. Mr. Garrick seconds that this House stands adjourned until Thursday. Sorry. Okay. This House stands adjourned until Thursday, January 6th at 9 a.m. There is a Rules Committee meeting in the Rules Committee room following adjournment. Quorum call is lifted.